And this is Linda Bennett, back with more Metaphysically Speaking. And again, Nancy's question was, can these spirits follow you home? My answer is no, not unless they are attracted to you. And they can get attracted to negative people, but they also get attracted to very powerful spiritual people. Whether you realize it or not, you're a spark of the divine. That is your origin. That will be your return home. I presume people listening to the show are spiritual people and not people looking to harm others.
If you're watching a scary movie and then it kind of stays with you and you're creeped out of your mind after the movie.
Which can happen because, especially with the techniques that they use in Hollywood today,
it's terrifying.
Things are absolutely out of control.
So that feeling, you kind of can't shake it off. Does that just mean like you changed your central nervous system and you have an adrenaline
made yourself
rush?
Nervous.
Yeah, and you have an adrenaline rush, so
and
you feel
have
different.
An adrenaline drain. Because you're terrified. Even if a demon, and I have twice been confronted by what they would call Satan, not Lucifer, who is an archangel, the bearer of light in charge of Venus, which we can cover at another time, but Satan is different from Lucifer. Satan is the name of the collection of evil energies and evil spirits and the leader of it. But if you let yourself get frightened, and twice, as I started to say, I've had confrontations with Satan. Once when I went over to help a friend during an exorcism, and once when I had repainted my room and set up the altar differently in Connecticut, and I was on the 3rd floor because the back of the house is on the 3rd floor. I may have said this before at another show, sorry. And I turned to look out the window because I felt something creepy out there. And there was the most I've had 3, because when I was a child, when I helped Gerhard, and then. Okay, so 3 confrontations with evil. And it was rising up from the ground and staring at me. I said, you've got one nerve. You're really bugging me. You're really irritating me. Be gone. And don't bother me again. And you don't get terrified. You don't get... First of all, it's startling looking, but I had already seen it twice. But other people haven't seen it twice. It's very startling looking. It's ugly. I didn't smell the smell then, but I smelt it when I was an infant, and I smelt it at Gerhardt's, who was a man who taught me exorcism back in Connecticut. And that's because I was not open karmically to being possessed, so he could teach it to me. I talked about it with one of the monks at Self-Realization a year later, and he said, yes, we gave permission for you to be taught. So your adrenaline drain from seeing something so ugly and so horrific and allowing yourself to be frightened because you inadvertently project yourself into the helpless person in the movie. And you think, what if that happens to me? It can only happen to you if you've done it to others or if you've allowed it to happen. Same thing with sexual abuse. If you've allowed it to happen, it did nothing to interfere. So people say, what's the karma of being sexually abused? Either you did it to someone else or you allowed it to happen, or like neighbors of mine when I was being battered by my mother, never helped me. Never brought it up. I knew they could hear the screams. My friend Joan, 2 houses down, said one time, we can hear you screaming all the way down here. I said, well, why don't one of you pick up the damn phone and call the police on her? No one ever interceded. So what does that mean? Another lifetime, they're going to be subjected to child abuse. They knew a child was being abused. They did absolutely nothing. That's how you incur negative karma. So don't go to see those movies. Don't patronize them. Don't say you love those movies because you're opening yourself up to being desensitized to evil energy, and you may not recognize it in the future. So my advice, don't reward Hollywood for putting on that crap. Just go on your merry way and watch positive things. If you get yourself all psyched out, go take a shower, go put on a happy program or happy music. That doesn't include rap and hip-hop. It means classical, country, and western, as long as they're not lying, sighing, dying, and crying. And some spiritual music.
Or watch a comedy.
Or watch the cartoon channel, or
Right.
watch a comedy, or watch, Everybody Loves Raymond or something. Watch the old Bill Cosby show. I love the Huxtables. And so if you surround yourself with negative energy, you are becoming more and more susceptible to not recognizing it because you're becoming desensitized.
So Nancy has the second half of this question, and she says, when you recognize evil or you sense evil, even if you just like have a creepy feeling and nothing having to do with the movie,
right? Does praying make it go away?
Yeah.
Not always. And one of the worst prayers I ever heard in my life, and I didn't like as a child, was the Catholic, now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord what is it? Now I lay me down to sleep.
Pray the Lord my soul to keep.
If I die before I wake, I pray
yeah.
I pray the Lord my soul to take. What kind of a kid wants to go to bed thinking they're going to die off? And that if they didn't love Jesus, they're going to hell. So I think that's a horrific thing to say. And then, what's the thing on the rock goodbye baby
on
in
the
treetops? If the
bough breaks,
breaks,
the cradle will rock or something.
And down will fall. Holy God! No wonder kids have terrible nightmares.
And boogeymans under the bed and all that.
And all that stuff. So, praying that's a good place to start. But understanding within your very core of your being that you are a spark of God, and evil cannot attach itself to you unless A, it's karmic, but you should still pray anyway, and B, you as a soul on this planet, in a physical body, on a physical planet, have the right to be here. Astral beings do not. The good ones, like your grandmother or something, are allowed to come through because they're helping you. Negative spirits, if you've been negative, are allowed to come through because you've been negative. And this is paying back karma. They're looking to see if they can capture you and suck out the life force and suck out your spirituality because they use it for their own power. They also feed off fear and anger. So all of you who have anger issues or fear issues, you are feeding negativity and draining your own adrenaline, which will make you more tired. It makes you susceptible to body chemistry problems, hormone problems, all kinds of immune system problems, etc. So praying is a good start, but understanding that you have the right to command evil to be abolished. You have the right, as a spark of the divine creator of the universe, to tell it to go away and mean it and be confident. And then change the channel and put on something else and don't even watch that garbage.
But also just in your life. Just sort of change the channel
and
of your life.
In your life, if you're surrounded by people who love those movies, there is a problem with them. They are attracted to that kind of horror and terror. And you can get sucked into that. That means you don't. That doesn't mean you don't say hello to them anymore, but you begin to change your friends to more positive people. So, how much more time do we have in this segment?
In this segment, we have about 9 minutes.
Oh, goody. Okay.
So let's get to more of Nancy's questions.
Nancy, bless Kristen. You have the best questions. The reason I don't like the Ouija board is because you cannot control who comes through. It's like an open invitation. You throw the door open to the astral world. Whoever shows up, shows up.
Linda, if someone has other questions for you, they can reach you at metaspeak.com. You can leave your questions there, or email linda@metaspeak.com.
Yes. Put your question there like these girls have done, and we will review them. And if we've covered it 500 times, I will not cover it again, except maybe for a second. And because I know that not all of you have heard all the shows, and more people are tuning into us and finding us. But so enter them there. And if I do a consultation for you and you give me permission to ask a question without using your full name, I'll be happy to use the question on the program. There was a question about, that's going to be involved, so I'll save that for the next show. But dying before your time. There is no such thing as dying before your time. You die when it's appropriate for you to die. And I know I've had 3 miscarriages, and it was heartbreaking. But not every soul is meant to have a full long 60-year life on the planet. Many souls just come through in the uterus to get the experience of being inside of a uterus. Many souls come and take a breath and then cross back over because they needed that experience of being born. Many souls realize what their menu was, their astrological chart was. They were very brave in the astral world to take on that much karma, but then they realized that they probably couldn't fulfill the mission successfully, and then they go back home again. They go back to the astral world. Parents, you have to remember, you didn't create the soul. It's a gift from the universe. It's your karma as well as the soul's karma, the child's karma. Not just you, you're not the only ones involved. So when you spend your lives grieving, you're throwing away the opportunity to be celebrating the fact that you had the chance to bring the soul through for as long as it was here. Some children live to be 5 years old. Some children live to be 9. One of my favorite kids in the world was little Manny Stepanek, who had muscular dystrophy, and he's the one who was on the Oprah show a lot and on different shows and wrote poetry. And that soul, he just glowed. He knew he was only going to be here for a short time, and it was his job to do the very best that he could and brighten other souls. What a little saint. What a little beamlet of light. The other one I love is Malala, who was a child who was shot by the Taliban, who wanted to be a spokesperson for girls' education. Because I was just reading a column written by the man who had first interviewed her 2 years before that happened, and she said, I can envision myself being shot by the Taliban. Because number one, she knew how dangerous it was in her country. Number two, it was an edict that the Taliban came in, who hate women. I'm sorry, you despise women when you make them prisoners. Don't tell me you love them, because that's not loving. Killing a woman because she won't date you isn't loving her. So therefore, she knew how dangerous it was and that girls are not supposed to be educated. That is a child of light. She may die tomorrow. She may die in 5 years. I hope she lives a long and productive life and advocates for education around the world for all children, especially girls. Every country that's pushed education for children has prospered. There isn't one on the planet that hasn't. So, when you're dying before your time, you usually have more than one death date. And that's when you've had death experiences. I've had a dozen. That's when you've had an almost car accident, an illness, etc. And then you chose to live. You chose to live because you took a tally in the astral world when you stopped breathing with your guardian angel and with the other angels who watch out for you. And they said, you're doing great. You're capable of doing another 10 years. We'll review it in 10 years. And the child comes back to life.
Let's say you almost are hit by a car and you didn't even go into a coma or anything like that, but you knew you had a brush with death.
Yes.
Same thing? And did you decide the night before or
you could have
months in
decided the
advance?
night before that this was going to be a natural death date for you, and to satisfy that karma, you were going to have some type of accident, but that you would survive and you would be fine.
Would you have decided that also in the astral world before you even came to the planet?
Yes, you were told when your natural death dates were going to be. Children who die naturally are never surprised. And often, I used to work with 2 women who started a very important counseling group that work with parents in hospitals who are terminally ill or chronically ill children. And the parents were, what did I do? How did I deserve this? It is not always about you. It is about your child's soul and their mission. So the child would often say to the parents, which blew the doctors and nurses away, Mommy, Daddy, let me go. It's my time. The soul is millions of years old. It's died millions of times. So is your soul. And the children always know.
The soul doesn't die, though.
The soul doesn't die. The costume dies. Because you wear it out. Who wants to be 100 years old? Bless them. Regis Philbin, I saw Regis Philbin today. He's 82 years old. He doesn't look a day over 60. He's got the energy of a 15-year-old. He's happily married to his wife, Joy, for 43 years. God bless him. He keeps himself involved. He keeps himself vital. And he's got good genes. So you can have vital, happy, healthy life and lousy genes, and you're going to die. But you know that. Dying is not the end. It's the end of the costume, and it's the beginning of the next costume, the next set of life experiences. So you are hopefully closer to the divine light going home again, which is why we live in a physical body. Is it pleasurable to sweat your tush off in the South? No. Is it pleasurable to get bitten by spiders? No. Is it pleasurable to have dogs bite you, or snakes, or have a rattlesnake come at you, or an alligator, which I've had twice in my own yard? No, I promise you. Is it great to have to get to your front door before the bear sees you, or the bear has already seen you, and you're moseying because you know if you start to run, any predator will be triggered into chasing you, even though it may not want to? I had that situation in Connecticut, and thank God I got to my door before the bear did. So therefore, you know when you're going to cross over. It is not punishment. It's your reward for a job well done. Parents need to say we had the privilege of having that little soul fulfill its mission, and we're going to move on with our lives because the little soul is moving on with its life. Maybe we'll get it again in another child. Maybe it'll go to other parents. But the important thing is we were given the gift of having that child in our lives. What did we learn? What did the child learn? Thank you, God, for that fabulous experience. It's not easier said than done, because it's true. And parents who survive these situations understand that even subconsciously.
So you're saying it is easier said than done?
It is easier said than done, especially with people who grow up in these religions who tell you that you're going to perish. I heard some nut on the television the other night saying if you don't believe in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you will perish. You will be one of the millions of souls in hell. That is so wrong. I cannot tell you how evil it is for people to believe that and perpetrate that lie on other individuals. If you're going to be a spiritual teacher, a priest, a monk, a nun, it is your job to tell the truth, not the truth of your religion. It's your job to tell God's truth. And you know what, people? If you just open up your hearts and minds to God's universal truth, you're going to know that God and the angels were always with you. Linda Bennett, and see you next time. Okay, everybody, I'm Linda Bennett, your spiritual counselor and psychic host for Metaphysically Speaking, which comes to you on Facebook, YouTube, where else? The web, Twitter,
Blog Talk Radio,
and a radio station in Sarasota. Which you're living in the area, you can see that, you can hear it rather. Nancy asked a really good question about soulmates. Soulmates, that's an expression that's so abused and so overworked and so blah blah. Soulmates are people you have been with in other lifetimes, happily and unhappily. Neutrals are what I call the people you've been with but maybe have no memory of because they were very brief, but they separate you from being ecstatic and depressed with the happy and the unhappy soulmates. They're people you are connected with by other lifetimes, other astral lives, and they are in your life because you have karma that you must finish up together. You have a feeling when the karma is over. Before I even laid eyes on my first husband, I was walking up the pathway. My company was selling the company he worked for to the man who used to be the vice president. I brought my secretary along. I had to be the official witness to the legal papers. She had to be a second witness. And there had been a lot of machinations in that company because they thought I was going to be perfect for this particular gorgeous guy, fabulous military officer, blah, 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 fabulous future, etc. We were walking towards the window, which had been bronzed over so you couldn't see inside, and it was reflecting the sun. And I felt this man staring at me, but I also felt him staring at my secretary, who was natural blonde, the kind of blonde that you'd pay $500 for the hair for. She was naturally blonde streaked, gorgeous blue sky eyes, gorgeous eyelashes, fabulous figure, but she was engaged, but I felt him staring at her. And Yogananda came and said, "You will marry, but you will not grow old together," before I even laid eyes on him. That was karma. Turns out he was my husband, and in my last lifetime, he repeated the same patterns in this lifetime that he did in that lifetime to drive me crazy And I was very unhappy married to him in that lifetime. I was very unhappy married to him in this lifetime. I'm done. I felt the cord snap. I was done. So, happy soulmates. That's the key term that I have created to indicate when it's a happy relationship. You don't just marry a soulmate. You marry someone you've been happily married to before in other lifetimes. Some people just fit together. They feel natural. It feels normal. It feels like it's old business and happy old business. That's a happy soulmate. The neutrals are there just to fill in, and maybe they'll be soulmates in another lifetime. We don't know. It's up to you and your guardian angel and them and their guardian angels when you're planning your lifetimes, because you usually plan about 3 or 4 lifetimes ahead in the astral world. So everybody figures out when to cross over, when to be born, where to be born, where they have to be, what they have to do, how they have to get together.
So there's more than one happy soulmate in terms of a marital partner
in each
lifetime.
Theoretically. I have not found that, unfortunately.
Right,
but nevertheless, I have a very different life than most people. Most people, yes, that's why they can be happily married a second time. It's not cheating on the first spouse. If you were happy the first time and you'll be happy the second time and you come back together again, that's what the karma is. You're getting an opportunity to continue to be happily married. You're perfecting that skill in your karmic arsenal of being happy with a partner, the blending of the male-female energy together.
Great.
And just because you meet someone and that person seems familiar doesn't mean you marry that individual. Just because someone knocks on the door doesn't mean you open it. And if you open it, doesn't mean you let them in. Use the first gut instinct you feel. And ladies, stop chasing bad boys. If you meet him in a bar, which you shouldn't be hanging out in, but if you meet him in a bar, you can't be shocked when he continues to hang out in the bar. Why are women shocked when they want the husband's home, but they're hanging out in bars? Because that's what he did before. He doesn't see any reason to change. So get someone who's already in the throes of life. Or unless you know that as you're growing up, you're going to marry the girl next door or the boy next door, and you're happy about it and you're contented about it, you take care of things that need to be taken care of, and then you're happily married. Okay. So just because someone comes knocking doesn't mean you let them in.
Anything else from Miss Nancy?
Oh, Miss Nancy has such great questions. Already covered the dying before time.
I know she had one about original sin and Mary and Joseph. Yes. This is big.
And I'll explain this more thoroughly, maybe, unless I cover it really great now, and this less for me to blabber about on the Christmas show. But in the Catholic religion, which was never the Catholic religion, I want to say this very clearly and very slowly. Jesus, Yeshua, Mary Mother, Father Joseph, all the brothers and sisters, his wife, yes, his wife, Mary of Magdala. Magdala was the town, which still exists today, that Mary was from. The Catholics say she was born without original sin. What is original sin? It is karma. So the Catholics are saying Mary never inhabited a physical body before. Whether that's true, we have no idea, and frankly, it doesn't matter to me. Mary has always been very special to me and will continue to be so. The night I had my first miscarriage, she came and said, "You will be pregnant again, but you will not have children in this lifetime," which broke my heart. And my little cat Smarty then wrapped his head around me because I was sobbing on the bed. Where was my ex? Watching a football game. Tender little guy. So she came and she gave me that information, which when I had the next 2 miscarriages, I was not looking forward to them, but I was not shocked, because she had already told me what the story was going to be. So, and then I look back on my life and say, if I had had children, how would I have been able to help the thousands of people that I've helped throughout my lifetime? It wouldn't have been possible, because I would have put my children and my husband first. By the way, ladies, if you're making the mistake of saying, my children come first, you're going to be divorced. or your husband's going to have a girlfriend. Because the husband and wife come first. They are the duplicate of the male-female energy of God. I have one hand. There's the front, which is the female energy, which is caved in like the cauldron, like the chalice, and the back of the hand is the masculine energy of God. Together, they're so perfectly blended, they're one hand. That's what a marriage is about. And the husband and wife are supposed to be raising the children as a team, as a unit. The happy marriages that I know of that had children were the ones who were together as a team. They were happily married. They came first. Their children were second. Because if you don't have a happy unit, you're not going to have happy children. So you need to think before you marry. You need to pick the right person. And you need to think before you have children. Because it is not the karma of every soul on every planet to have children. You may need to specialize in medicine. You may need to specialize in research. You may need to specialize as an educator. You may need to specialize as an engineer, as a plumber. It doesn't matter. It's not your karma in every lifetime to have children, nor is it your karma to be married in every lifetime. You're learning other things. Did I cover that question?
Yes. Oh, then she had a question that I hope everyone's enjoying these questions because I think they're really informative about new souls. We're Mary.
The Immaculate Conception. So
right.
It was not about Jesus. It was about Mary. Thank you for helping me get on track. So it said that Mary was so pure, and the assumption was when she was absorbed bodily up into heaven. Well, we all know that's physically impossible. The universe doesn't change physical laws just for a religion. Mary died the same way everybody else does. And on the Christmas show, I'm going to show a book called Jesus Died in India. In Europe, it's called that. In Asia. In America, it's called Jesus Lived in India. And there's a picture of Jesus's burial site, mausoleum, and of Mary's. And the Islamics deify Mary and Jesus as powerful spiritual teachers and prophets. Both of them. Which is so ironic today when so many people who are Islamic hate women. And the when it talks about Jesus and Mary going to paradise, guess what the translation is for paradise? Kashmir. Which now is under Islamic hands, but it's been Islamics and before then Christians and before then the early Jews who guarded the burial sites. So Mary dying of original sin and the assumption is trying to make Mary something special. All religions who are trying to outdo the other religion try to have the virgin birth. That's very Middle Eastern. The Celts, Native Americans, the Aborigines have no such nonsense. Polynesians have no such nonsense. If you're part of the God vibration, you come through naturally where you have to come through. So that's the Immaculate Conception. That is original sin, which is karma.
And then she had a question, it's all fantastically explained, about, okay, so new souls coming to the planet.
New souls coming to the
Were
planet.
Adam and Eve the only new souls?
Oh, get a life. And I've mentioned before that Adam's and Eve was not the first wife, she was the second. Why was she the second? Because Adam's first wife was Lilith. And Lilith was the goddess of the night that protected travelers, that protected children, that protected hunters, that protected the animals in the forest who were not scheduled to die that night. She was a general protectress. But when the Jews came along, who has already archaeologically been proven to come from the Canaanites, they were the poor Canaanites who they have found the bones, they have found the murder of the wealthy Canaanites. The poor Canaanites rose up against the wealthy Canaanites, stole the wealth, murdered the people, and took off. And they know this because the pottery from the digs matches the pottery today. So, what was I saying?
You were talking about the Adam and Eve.
Oh, Adam and Eve, right. That story just grosses me out. So, in order to cement themselves into the consciousness of the people and be a masculine ordained religion with all this hellfire and damnation, they started trying to kill off the female energy of God. And Lilith was very beloved. So what did they do? They said she killed children, she ate animals, she killed people who traveled at night. And over several generations, people began to believe that, because anybody who knew the truth wasn't going to believe it, but you keep repeating a lie often enough, people begin to believe it. Lilith was just fine. The one thing that they think they got off track with on True Blood, which is a show that I watch when it's on HBO, is that they made Lilith this demon vampire goddess, which is such crap. I can't even tell you. It was insulting. She came out bloody, and she influenced who's the queen of the vampires, and God is really a vampire. If they don't make it better this year, I swear off that show.
Duly noted.
Duly noted.
Duly noted.
So Lilith was a goddess of the Middle East, was very beloved and revered, and they called upon her to protect their children at night. If you had to go out at night, now, those of you who come from cities don't know what the dark is, because you've got light everywhere. If you lived out in the country like I used to live, and if you live in Denver and you face the mountains, you can't even see your hand in front of your face. So it was extraordinarily dangerous to travel, even stick your nose outside at night. So they vilified her, and they created Eve.
Okay.
Who was, if you read the Bible and you read Genesis, in the first page or two it says God created Adam and Eve because, again, the Jews were writing it and they wanted to get rid of Lilith, so they didn't mention Lilith then. God created Adam and Eve equally at the same time. Then you just skip a couple of pages and they talk about God created Eve from Adam's rib. Well, that is such crap. I can't even begin to express it. But that was their way of putting women in second place. Number one, by not mentioning Lilith, and number two, by saying that female couldn't exist without male. Well, males can't exist without women either.
Well, here's a question. So if Adam and Eve, okay.
No, they were not. They were survivors of the Great Flood, which was just covered on the History Channel last night. Every major civilization has a flood story. When you look at the mountains, when you look at their ancient burial sites, you can see the sediment levels. They're all around the same time, about 5,000 to 6,000 years ago and about 15,000 years ago. That's when the last part of Atlantis went down. Parts of Atlantis, like Florida, part of the Caribbean, Ireland, England, Australia, Polynesia, survived. But that's when the major last cataclysm occurred. A smaller cataclysm was the Great Flood. And when the Earth shifts its axis, the oceans are going to move over land. And they're going to cover land up. How the heck anybody believes they got 2 tigers, 2 lions, 2 elephants, 2 of everything that exists today on board is nuts. They were able to save the creatures that were in the area, but not everything on the planet. So there's obviously more than one survivor. People around the world continued to survive horrible circumstances, living in caves because their houses were destroyed. So the idea of brutal cavemen, that comes from you had to take shelter.
Right.
You had to take shelter from marauding, hungry animals. You had to exist together to be able to survive.
As we just wrap up this segment, the next question was about, are new souls being created?
Yes. Why? I have no idea. I've told God a million times, this whole idea sucks. Why did you ever split us out? We could be joyfully within your vibration and your warmth and your love. I think it's dumb. We're going to have big conversations when I get over there. So new souls are being created, but they don't get plopped in the middle of a city. They get plopped on an island somewhere where it's calm and where it's peaceful, and people relate to nature and relate to animals, and they relate to each other. That's a strong family environment.
And so most of the souls that are getting reincarnated now, for example, would be old souls working off karma.
Yes.
And that's why there's so many lessons.
And the indigo children that they refer to, who a friend of ours has a child, and when I first took a look at him, I said, he's a baby and I'll give the father's name. I won't give the father's name. And I said, and he's one of the indigo children. And that has proven very effective. And we're going to come back for our final segment on Metaphysically Speaking, and this is Linda Bennett. Stay with us. And this is Linda Bennett, back with more Metaphysically Speaking on our final segment. Your spiritual counselor and psychic host for Metaphysically Speaking. You can find us on the web. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, blog, talk radio, and YouTube. Okay. We have this whole list of questions has been from a gal named Nancy. And then I have a list of questions from Kristen. And if you have questions, please enter them on our website, and I'll be happy to cover them for you. Another question Nancy had was, does everything happen according to God's plan or our choices? Well, God doesn't have a specific plan for you. That moves along through your own actions and reactions in every lifetime. So you're basically setting your own karma. Your guardian angels are guiding you as to how much you can cover in each lifetime. That's what your astrological chart is all about. It's like pick 2 from column A, 3 from column B, 4 from column C, and that is what your life is about. God's plan was for this to be a happy, beautiful, environmentally safe, and protected planet. Humans are destroying it with their own free will. Fracking is a nightmare. We already have the technology for other types of fuel which have been bought out by the oil companies and buried. You can't even use windmills in certain areas because of migrating birds. They've now discovered certain heights for certain areas, but still windmills cannot be used everywhere. We should not be damming another river. We have solar energy. China is the #1 producer of solar energy in the world now. Why isn't the United States? There are enough Sunbelt states, and let me tell you, I don't want to hear any whining about the Northeast because it doesn't snow every day. There are plenty of long hot springs in summers and falls. There's plenty of opportunity for solar. Everyone should have a solar panel on their roof. So therefore, God's plan was for this place to continue to be a beautiful garden. Humans are mucking it up. You do not get rain where there are no trees. You get rain where there are forests and grasslands. And Central Park in New York City is a beautiful place. It was very smart of Robert Moses and the government of New York State to see that those things happened, that the beachfronts were protected, etc. It's humans who cut down the mangrove trees which protect the soil and the earth. It's humans who've knocked down the sand dunes. That wasn't God's plan. So the people who knock down the sand dunes can't be surprised when they get flooded out. So therefore, you're doing both. God's plan was perfection. There is a blueprint. It's the astral vibration of the earth. It's how earth should be progressing and functioning today versus what it's doing, which is really very pathetic. We don't own this planet. God does. We're just borrowing it. And we're messing it up. It's a disgrace. I also want to know why the United Nations hasn't sent out ships to haul in those 3-mile-long nets that kill fish and sea turtles and whales and dolphins every single day. Why hasn't the United States and the rest of the United Nations come down on the country of China for capturing sharks, slicing off their fins, and dropping their helpless bodies to drown back in the sea? That is cruelty. Because people want shark fin soup, get a life. There are enough vegetables in the country of China that you can have great soup. You don't need to slaughter animals. So I want to know what the heck the United Nations is doing anyway. That's been one of my major gripes. Okay, I think we've covered.
I think you've covered it.
Just about.
Thank you.
Karma of suicide. All right.
Okay.
If you kill yourself before your natural death date, you don't get out of the karma. All of that will be covered in your next lifetime. I have had people who are atheists say, I must be living more than one lifetime because I've got so many problems. You probably are. You don't escape anything. Look, when I was a kid, they're calling it bullying today. When I was a kid, it was called being picked on. I was picked on and called a witch. I was picked on because I was in the smart classes. I was picked on because my face broke out. When I was 11, I got the 2 P's and B. Period, pimples, and breasts. It's been a nightmare ever since. So, if anybody didn't have perfect skin, God spare them. I was miserable as a kid, and there were teachers who humiliated me because I got math answers out of the air, wrote them down, and they were infuriated. I'll cover this at another time when we talk about bullying, because I had a teacher that made my life such a misery. If someone had shot her, they'd have been rewarded instead of punished. She was a horror. So therefore, and how Alec Baldwin's father helped me restore my reputation in high school. There you go. We'll talk about that at another time. Now, we have covered, I think, all of Nancy's questions. We're going to get to Kristen's questions, and one of them was relevant today, in fact, on the Dr. Oz show. As you know, he's a cardiologist, and he covers, now his wife has been into alternative medicine for years. She's taught him yoga, she's taught him meditation, he talks about his restless mind. I've talked before about how the monk who was in charge of North America at the time was a guest on my show, and he said that even he has trouble at times focusing on his meditation.
The Buddhist monk.
The Buddhist monk, who was a wonderful man. He invited me to Dar es Salaam, where the Dalai Lama frequently is, and I couldn't go, but he said, "You have my open invitation at any time." And then he looked at the second ex-husband at the time. He said, "Oh, you can come too." I guess he figured, this is not going to work out if I'm not pleasant to him. But even he said to me, "Linda, I, as a Buddhist, my entire life, still have trouble quieting my mind." So Dr. Oz, don't give up. But he was covering chakras. And who was his guest? A neurologist who thought, this seems to relate to neurology and endocrinology. And you can go online and you can find the 7 major chakra points. There are 144 chakra points in your body. Most of them are minor chakra points, but they may control your hand, they may control your eye, whatever. And they talked about the different foods. Now, traditionally they say, for instance, the heart chakra is green. Well, that's nice. But if you need more emotional support, you need the color pink. So you will gravitate to pink rather than green. Don't worry about what somebody else says you need. If you're troubled, if you have heart trouble, make sure everybody should have their green vegetables. But bring in the colors that bring you joy. Pink is the color of love. Self, respect, love for others, love for animals, love for nature. And she also talked about the 7th chakra, called the crown chakra. The way you balance it out is going into nature. What happens when I'm berserk and I think all humans are crazy? I go out in my yard and I plant more flowers. Or I deadhead my flowers, or I do something and I change the bird bass and I suddenly feel better. Even though I don't really relate to Florida, I feel great with my garden. So go to nature. They also made the mistake of saying that the 7th chakra doesn't correspond to the physical body. It does. When the pituitary gland, which is the 6th chakra, which is called the 3rd eye, and the pineal gland, which is the hypothalamus area, vibrate together because you are in a perfect state of harmony, they create an electrical connection that sets up a circular vibration between the two, and you are now in a state of bliss. Whether it's meditation, whether it's staring at a statue of Mary. I have a chair out there that I sit and I talk to Mary. I have another one in front of Buddha and Avalokitesvara. I have angels out there. When you are in a state of calmness and peace and divine light, that's when your pituitary and your pineal gland are circling together in an electromagnetic field circuit, and that ignites the 7th chakra at the top of your head. That's also where you get a lot of divine blessings. So Kristen's question was, I know you've talked a bit about feng shui and qi, or ki, or prana. It's the same thing. It's the life force. It's your soul. I wonder if chi can become so congested or off that it seriously affects one's physical health. And the answer is yes. I was referring to somebody today who has a strangling job where the politics in that company is so vomitous that it's a wonder they can exist. But sadly, the leader of the company is vomitous and politically oriented and power oriented, and things will never change until that person is gone. And the people who follow her like little puppy dogs are gone as well. So this person has trouble with her thyroid, which is the fifth chakra, the throat, which is where you express your emotions, which is where you express your intellect, which is where you express affection and ideas, concepts, etc. So if you have a situation where you feel strangled and choked back, you are going to have problems in those chakras. If you're constantly being made to feel bad about yourself, your solar plexus, that's your tummy area, and your mid-tummy, you're going to constantly feel drained. You will have problems with your ovaries. You can have problems with your testes. You will have problems with your adrenals. You will have all kinds of endocrine system problems there as well. And remember, the endocrine system is threaded together, and if one's out, they're all out. So yes, they can become so congested from emotional terror, intellectual terror, insecurity, that you begin to have problems with your physical body. Very often, spontaneous healing is because somebody's chakra is opened, which happens during meditation. It can happen with working with crystals. It can happen with relating to your dog or your cat, relating to someone on a spiritual level, relating to nature. That is how we're supposed to be relating to each other, in harmony. Not anger, not pettiness, not I'm going to take power over you. That is anti-God. It is very God-like to be loving, gracious, kind. Then your chakras will uncongest. Your body will decongest. And you will be feeling much better. That's why people, those of us who meditate, always feel better. Your health clears up. If it's your karma to be paralyzed, you will not suddenly spring to life and do the Irish jig. But your overall health will be better. Your outlook will be better. You'll have a better understanding of why you're in this situation. Look at Christopher Reeves. He had that horrible horseback riding accident, and he became a spokesperson for spinal cord injuries. Michael J. Fox, Parkinson's. Multi-millions of dollars have been sent to Parkinson's research because he's carrying on with dignity and he's a great spokesperson. So sometimes you take on a karma of ill health so that you can be inspiring to others and call attention to the problem. And sometimes just getting your chakras balanced, which can happen if you have a good spiritual teacher, or you sit in meditation and call upon any of the special aspects of God. They're all individual aspects like we are. No one is better than others. Mary and Jesus and Joseph are not better than Buddha and Avalokitesvara, not better than Tara, not better than Sarasvati, who was in charge of knowledge and wisdom, not better than Pele, who is the fire principle, the goddess of the fire principle, along with the Archangel Michael of the planet. You can call on any of them and ask them for divine intervention and divine healing. Or just say, God, help me. I need healing. My special guardian angel or angels, please help me. Because I need a healing. And you will get it as far as your karma allows. You may not be finished with your karmic lesson, so you have to continue along in a little way, but you will get an understanding of that. Or ask for a sign. Now, whenever you and I see a peacock, it's Krishna. Or I'll turn on the TV and I'll be watching a show. There'll be something about Mary or Jesus or Buddha. And that's who I've asked for help. And there's my answer. Yes, Linda, we hear you. Tough Twinkies, you're not getting your answer. You're not getting your wish fulfilled, but we hear you. So prayer is helpful, understanding that you are more than a physical body which will wear out and die off. And you know, people, I think the mortuary industry is going to hate me right now because I'm going to tell you something. Don't waste your money on a $5,000 or a $2,000 casket or a $10,000 casket lined in velvet or satin. You're going to rot in it anyway. Why are you spending money? You're never going to use that body. The idea of the great resurrection is nonsense. And in our next show, she asked about the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is similar to the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is similar to a lot of different other histories of different nations around the world that have an understanding of the crossing process. I think, did I show the picture of judgment in that TV show that I did? Okay. All you have to do is go back to that TV show and find the Egyptian judgment picture, and you'll understand the journey of the soul, how it gets evaluated, and how it gets moved on, either to a happy place or an unhappy place. And she asked a really good question about how could evil exist and the levels of evil, how could that happen on our planet, which we'll be covering next time. But I want you to understand, there's no such thing as death, people. You're just changing your costume like you change your clothes throughout the day. And you're taking a spiritual shower like you should shower twice a day. You shower at night before you go to bed because you're going to put the earthly journey to away. You're going to wash that away, and you're going to take your spiritual journey at night. Venturing to other planets, the astral world, talking to the angels, talking to future souls you're going to be with, etc. Then you take a shower in the morning because you wash away the nighttime and you're getting fresh for the day. They don't have to be an hour shower. It could be a 5-minute shower. If you wash your hair like I do every night, like you do, it's longer. But nevertheless, you're washing away the appropriate energy for the appropriate time. So there is no such thing as death. Changing costumes, changing locations, same soul. That's why people say to me, Linda, I feel the same as I did when I was born. I feel the same as I did when I was a child. I feel the same thing I did when I was 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, because you are the same. But hopefully, like you got out of school, you're evolving and learning more. And you'll learn more if you just open up your hearts and minds to God's universal truth. You'll know that God and the angels are always with you. Linda Bennett signing off with Metaphysically Speaking.